You're full.
The point I'm making is, well, what is it going to tell me? Here's the thing we don't know. One of the things is, I'll tell you what will probably, because I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people who've already done blood work, so I know what it's going to show, basically. So we've got this study going. We've got all these people submitting blood work. But probably my HDL will go up, my triglycerides will go down, my blood sugar will stabilize to a low level, my inflammatory markers will be normal. That's because I've seen lots and lots of other people's blood work already, so I know it's going to show. My cholesterol may be up or down, and that's something that we get a lot of people worried about that. And I can talk about cholesterol. In my view, is a pretty worthless marker, by itself. You have to take it into context, and so there's a couple people that are really, really intelligent about cholesterol that are really testing this sort of stuff. One guy's name is Dave Feldman. On Twitter, his name is Dave Keto. There's another guy named Ivor Cummins, who's an Australian. They're both engineers. And so this is what happened to this guy, Dave. He goes on a ketogenic diet, and his cholesterol goes sky friggin' high. It's like 400, way, way up there. And his doctor's freaking out, and he's freaking out. So he's like, I don't understand this. I mean, I feel great. Everything about me is just best health I've ever felt in my life. So what he does is he starts drawing his blood every single day. He gets a blood test. And what he finds out is that his blood cholesterol is all over the place. One day it's 300, the next day it's 200. One day it's 350, the next day. So when we go to the doctor every 6 months or a year and they get a blood cholesterol, you assume, well, that's my cholesterol, and it's always that way. Well, he found out that it's so variable. They've actually known about this since the 1950s, but no one has been talking about it. So what he figured out, and he's a systems engineer, and these engineers are some smart guys. I mean, that's one thing I kind of talk about. It's just because somebody's an MD or PhD doesn't mean they know everything. There's a lot of people that are plumbers and whatever. They don't have any formal training that can figure. They're smart people, and they can figure this stuff out. So he's an engineer, a real smart guy. And so what he does is he figures out that cholesterol is basically all it is it's traveling around in your blood based on energy flux. So if you've eaten a lot, so if you've eaten a whole bunch of food and you're full, your liver is saying, I don't need to put out a bunch of fat, because we burn fat as fuel, well, even if we're not on a ketogenic diet. So what it does is it transports fat. So when you're hungry and you haven't eaten it for a while, like you fasted for a blood test, your liver says, we need fat in the system because we're low on energy. And so it shoots out all this fat. And what happens is cholesterol is just cruising around for a ride. So it's just sitting there, as a passenger. So depending on how much you've eaten, when you've eaten, that'll change your cholesterol. And so it's not a very good marker. I mean, you can find studies that show for all-cause mortality, like if you're like you and me on it, because you're the same age as I am, I think you're right.
50?
Yeah, we're both 50.
Yeah.
So if we look at, and again, associational studies are not that great, but if you look at that and you say all-cause mortality, am I going to die or not? If your cholesterol is high, you're less likely to die. If your cholesterol is high, you're less likely to get Parkinson's disease. If your cholesterol is high, you're less likely to get a bunch of cancers. So it's like...
So you're saying that, though, but most people hear this and they go, but if your cholesterol is high, you're going to get a heart attack.
Well, here's the deal.
You're going to die.
Yeah, here's the deal with heart attacks. And this is interesting because, vegetarians and vegans, I don't mean to pick on vegetarians and vegans because, I know some great ones are great people, and I think, there shouldn't be a war between this, but vegetarians and vegans, the number one killer of a vegetarian and vegan is heart disease. I mean, that's what kills them, too. It kills everybody. So it's just like, do you trade, am I going to die of cancer or am I going to die of heart disease? Which one, pick your poison?
Well, most people don't understand that the sugar industry's hijacking of science in the 1950s, the way they paid off those scientists to literally false advertise the idea that sugar is safe for you, but that saturated fat and cholesterol is what's causing all of these issues with people and heart attacks. To this day, people just sort of repeat that. Like they think it's gospel.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's part of the framework of society now. I mean, it's like...
What was the push that got you to say, I'm just going to eat nothing but meat? Was there anybody that you knew that was doing it really well that you were talking to? Did you get some... Well,
like I said, it was just reading about people online, I'll tell you what, if there's a guy named Joe Anderson on Twitter, and his handle is Joe Charlene 8898 or 9888. It's this guy, it's just the guy, he's been doing it for 20 years. I'm just like, this is pretty cool. And like I said, reading back on that stuff. And then just because I've been an athlete, I'm like, and I don't, I've never taken drugs and stuff like that. And I was always like, what can get me to the next level as far as athletic competition? Because I'm just a really competitive guy. I mean, I just like to, push myself and see what works.
I know a lot of savage people that eat mostly meat. My friend Cam Haynes eats almost all meat.
Yeah.
He occasionally eats like something else. but most of what he eats is meat. My friend Jocko Willink,
Yeah.
when he's tired, he goes, I need more steak. That's what he does. He eats meat.
I mean, it's a friggin' health food. It totally is. I mean, and there's a guy named Bobby Maximus who's a fitness guy. I guess he used to be an MMA guy years ago or something like that. But I know he did this steak every day thing. And so if we look back into history, I mean, there's all kinds of accounts of people using meat as an athletic performance enhancer. Back in the original Greek Olympics, those guys knew that they ate a lot of meat, they performed better. The beef eaters out of London, these guys were the guards for the kings. They gave them extra meat because they know they would fight better. The Mongols, they just decimated, all through Asia. They basically just ate their horses and their meat. That's what they did when they traveled with that, And so you've got all these historical examples of people performing better. The Inuit, they were known to have this incredible work capacity, and all they ate was seal meat and reindeer and stuff like that.
So what's a typical diet for you? Like, you give me a normal day. You wake up in the morning. What do you do?
Well, I'll tell you what today. So today, I mean, eating wise, generally either one meal or two meals, depending on what my workout training is going to be. So this morning, because I knew I was coming up here, I trained real early in the morning. Well, it's fast. I set a new record, by the way, in my personal record just doing that. But I had a couple of New York strips. So I had about 2 pounds. So
you ate 2 pounds of meat.
Oh, that's a snack, man.
Is that your phone, man, that keeps
it could
beeping?
be.
It might have your little thing on there.
Yeah, I think I'm probably getting notifications from
people are saying, "Hey, bro, see you on YouTube, bro."
Let me turn that sucker
It's amazing, man. You look just like you.
Yeah.
So you had 2 New York strips today?
Yeah. I mean, that's
2 pounds of meat.
It took me a while to build up to this. Before, like a pound of meat would be, that'd be tough. Now I can put down 4 pounds at one time.
And people looking at you would go, "Well, he's super lean." Like, obviously, whatever you're eating, your body's processing it really well. I mean, you don't have what someone would think of as a steak eater gut. Like, you tell a guy eats 2 steaks a day, and like, oh, he must have a gut. But that's all the mashed potatoes and macaroni and cheese and bread.
I mean, it's the stuff you eat with it. I mean, I'm just, I put, like I said, on that Instagram page, I've got, me exercising, doing stuff, and, pictures.
That was something that you talked about outside the studio right before we came in, that the studies that have been done on people consuming meat, and I brought this up as well, that there's a lot of misconceptions about these studies because they're not very clear. When they say that people who eat meat 5 times a week are more likely to get cancer, what they're not telling you is what these people ate along with the meat. Are they eating cheeseburgers? Or are they eating grass-fed beef where it's grass-finished, grass-fed, high in essential fatty acids, healthy for you? Or are they eating some bullshit cheeseburger with a sugary drink? Like, what is the rest of their diet? Are they consuming a lot of refined carbohydrates? Are they consuming a lot of sugar? Are they drinking alcohol? Are they smoking cigarettes? All you're saying is they're eating meat 5 days a week. It's not specifying in any way their actual overall diet.
Yeah, they don't sort that very well out, and so they've got all these epidemiology studies. And basically, a meat eater is basically someone, and statistically, we know they're more likely to smoke, they're more likely to drink, they're more likely not to wear their seatbelt, they're more likely to be in accidents, they're more likely not to go to their doctor, they're more likely just not to care. So that's what a meat eater is.
Why is that?
Well, it's just because if I tell you, as I say, Joe, eating meat's bad for you, and you say, F you, I don't care about my health. Right? So you just don't care. So this is it. So they can't separate that out. So they've got all these studies where they try to separate it out. Let's say we'll kind of even up the smokers, but they never can take that I don't give a fuck thing out of it. And so you've got this stuff, and then all the studies are really, really low strength. So if we look at, and we can talk about this about meat being causing cancer, because there's some concern about that with colon cancer. But if we look at smoking, when they determined that smoking caused cancer, the epidemiology showed a 2,000% increase in the incidence of cancer in a lot of studies. When they compare that to meat and cancer, they found an 18% increase, which is nothing. I mean, it's like it doesn't even matter. It's so
18% isn't high?
Not when you look at relative risk, right? Uh-huh. So if your risk of getting colon cancer is 1, or say your risk of getting colon cancer is 5 in a million, right?
Uh-huh.
And now it's 6 in a million. I mean, it's like nothing. I mean, it's like it's so minor. But if your risk is going from 5 in a million to 300 in a million, then you're like, well, that's pretty powerful.
Right.
So this is the problem. So it depends on the incidence. So if it's really low to begin with and you only raise it by a tiny amount, It's so small. And so what we know, there was a guy named Bradford Hill who talked about statistical correlations on when these things actually matter. And not till you get to 200% or 300% does it even matter. You can't draw any conclusion from that. The problem is
200, 300% difference out of like 1,000.
Yeah, right.
So like instead of 2, it would be 6. Yeah, something along those lines.
So instead
2
of
people out of 1,000.
Right. So instead of being 18% more likely, you're 200% more likely.
Right. Those numbers are confusing to people, though. The way you say like 200%, like what? That's a lot of people.
Right. So you would have to double or triple your risk.
Okay.
So 18% is not double or tripling. That's only putting it up by a fraction. Right.
Right.
So when you separate all that stuff out, and then there was the World Health Organization 2 years ago, declared that red meat was a class 2 carcinogen and processed meats was a class 1 carcinogen. They said it's like plutonium and smoking, and everybody runs all over the place with that.
Well, why'd they do that?
So here's why they do that. So first of all, and you can go on their website, and they'll tell you what their conclusions were. So this was done by an organization called the International Association for Research on Cancer. They're based out of Lyon, France, and they are that's what the World Health Organization uses to determine their stuff. And so they're written, and this is, besides the point, but right now the IRC is under investigation by U.S. Congress for using crappy science and, promoting a political agenda. So I don't know if that's true or not. Part of that's generated by probably big corporations who don't like their findings. But so they're under investigation for that. But what they say is we have some weak epidemiology, which is this 18% stuff, but we think we have some strong mechanistic reasons for this, right? So if everybody, there's a doctor named George Ede, E-D-E, who's a psychiatrist out in Maryland who's got this just tremendous, she analyzed the whole thing. She has a website called diagnosisdiet.com. So she did an analysis of all the 800 studies they used, and she found that what they ended up doing is most of them showed that meat didn't cause cancer. There was a small percentage that did. They looked at all these rat studies, and there was about 25 rat studies, and they found like 3 or 4 of them showed that meat, if we gave this type of cancer, if we gave this rat a certain, amount of meat, and we genetically bred them, and we gave them a medicine that makes them get cancer, that they get a little bit of change in their colon that might turn into cancer.
What medicine makes them get cancer?
Oh, I don't remember. There's something. There's a special way to make rats get cancer. So they have this model that it makes them get cancer really, really easy. So what they did is they felt.
Why would they do that if they're trying to find out if something gives something cancer?
Well, because they want to make it. They want to be able to, they want to differentiate that as quick as possible. Because they got to use 1 million rats and.
I get it. I see what you're saying.
So this is a real fast way to show if they get cancer. But the problem with that, and she explains it very well, is that we don't know that they would get cancer. It's not shown. And the other thing, and we talked about this before, is that if you want to look at rat studies, and it's not to say that plants give you cancer, but there are pesticides in plants that have been studied in rats that we eat every day, natural foods and vegetables and fruits, that also give rats cancer. And so the only difference is we've got some really
by pesticides, you mean things that natural compounds that plants extract or that plants secrete in order to discourage predation.
Exactly.
So these natural substances, when they feed them to rats and they isolate them and feed them to rats, it gives the rats cancer.
Of 52, they tested 27 of them showed
and these
cancer.
are just normal foods that we eat on a daily basis.
Normal stuff we eat on a daily basis. And so it's not to scare people out of eating that stuff, but it's just saying that's how much BS this stuff is based upon.
But it just seems to me to be so crazy that they're doing a cancer study and they give the rat something that induces cancer in order to find out what gives them cancer more. So they give them this compound, and then on top of the compound, then they check their diet.
Right.
That seems so bananas.
And they also feed them sugar with it. So it's kind of like it's just the way they do it. And so you can extrapolate. Does that really matter to humans or not?
It's just so hard to tell. I mean, there's so many things that animals can eat that we can't. It's just the whole thing is bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, we're not rats. That's interesting. It's like the same thing when we talked about, cancer rates in the historical populations. At Messiah, they didn't have much cancer. Not until we started feeding them, the 1940s, 30s, and stuff like that. Not until we started feeding them all our crap that they started to get those diseases. So.